The village of Dorchester was settled in 1697 by Puritans from Dorchester, Massachusetts, hence the name Dorchester. And then later in the village's history, there was an order for the construction of a fort to protect a powder magazine due to fear of a French naval attack.
At the beginning of the Revolutionary War, as South Carolina's revolutionary leaders were preparing to fight for independence from Great Britain, Dorchester became considered a fallback position if Charleston were to fall to the British in a British attack. And the town already had an existing powder magazine at the Tabby Fort, so this was a good place to store the means to have a revolution. You had gunpowder, lead, flints, cannons stored here. To protect them, you had troops coming in. The Council of Safety for South Carolina, they wanted to fortify this town to make sure that it would be secure.
We do know that there were orders for additional fortifications of the village in 1775. There's so much that we don't know.
The plan existed, it was submitted, but it hasn't survived. So we're hoping that maybe archaeology will reveal something.
The earliest archaeological investigations were carried out in 1959 and 1960. These were performed by a history professor, and we don't really know a lot about the work that he did here, but that work was really instrumental in getting this property preserved as a historic resource and it becoming a state park. The South Carolina Institute of Archaeology and Anthropology did some work here. They found a source that indicated that the church was possibly fortified. The excavations that they did were non-continuous, but they lined up across the space. And so now with the GPR, we can fill in those spaces and see if we do have a continuous, palisade ditch.
Ground penetrating radar, or GPR, is a non-invasive technology that we use to pre-plan where we have any sort of archaeological excavation. What we do is we set up a grid, and it looks like we're pushing a lawnmower back and forth. It's got an antenna on the bottom of it and a computer on the top, and we can see what the raw data looks like as we're collecting it. It sends a signal down into the ground, and that signal bounces back up. And what we do with the computer is we measure the strength that the signal comes back at and how long it takes it to bounce back. And that gives us an idea of how deep an anomaly is and how dense it is. This is really optimal conditions. We don't have to push over a lot of trees or debris or things like that. So one of the things that's really exciting about a project like this is the quality of the data is going to be fantastic.
Since this is such a nice open space, and we know that there are probably a lot of buried structures and features, it's ideal for GPR.
The staff here have a map based on the lots in Colonial Dorchester. We were using those lots kind of in the proximity of the church to identify an area that's likely to yield the Revolutionary War fortifications that we are hoping to find.
They're working on lots 53, 54, 55, and 56. And we know, we have some information about who owned those lots. We don't necessarily know if there were any structures on those, how they were used. So this will be data that we can use to be able to talk a little bit more about the history of, the village of Dorchester and how those lots were used, and potentially doing archaeological investigations to explore the features.
What we can tell in the raw data is we can see that we're finding anomalies, but it's much more generic. We can just kind of see that there's anomalies, there's things happening beneath the surface. Once we finish our data collection here, I'll return to my office and then process all of the data. And it's really once we have all of the data compiled and we can produce that 3D map, that we can then really begin to analyze that data and make determinations on what the anomalies that we're seeing are. We take that 3D map and we slice it, which is basically like if you think of a layer cake, we're peeling the layers off of the data. And what we'll do is we'll generate a map for every 30 centimeters or so of depth, and then we put it into GIS software so that we have it oriented and we can compare it with the data that we collected previously. Then we go through the data and we mark all of our anomalies.
Results from the GPR survey were used to identify 8 geophysical anomalies interpreted to belong to the historic occupation of Dorchester. This included a trench or ditch running across the historic parcels. This may be the fortifications from the Revolutionary War. In some places, the ditch has signs of a wall or palisade on the inside. Archaeological testing is needed in order to better understand if the possible trench feature is a Revolutionary War period fortification ditch. By excavating a small portion of the feature and examining soil layers and artifacts that comprise the fill, we can gather information about the characteristics of the feature, such as the precise shape and form, how it was originally dug, when and how it was used, and when and how it was filled in. In addition to the trench, there were 4 possible structures. The largest is 36 by 46 feet and is located within Lot 54. No buildings or landowners are depicted on the 1742 plat, suggesting that the structure was not present when the plat was created. The size and shape of this possible structure is similar to the house excavated on Lot 17, owned by the Izzard family.
I have hopes that more people will become aware of Colonial Dorchester State Historic Site and become interested in the site and will want to come visit and support the work that we do here.